We'll study about objects and object-oriented programming in JavaScript. We'll study about the properties of objects, and we'll study about object literals. What are object literals and how they can help us create new objects. We'll study how object-oriented programming is implemented in JavaScript, how you can create new classes, how you can create new objects based on those classes, and also we'll study about constructor functions. And finally we'll look at how inheritance can work in JavaScript, where one object can inherit from other object, right, or one class can be extended to the other class. So let's get started. Okay, so objects in JavaScript, very simple types of JavaScript are numbers, strings, boolean, and undefined, and all the other values are objects. So there are some primitive values which are strings, numbers, boolean, etc., and then there are objects. Okay, so these two kind of data types we have in JavaScript. Objects in JavaScript are mutable keyed collections. So that means is that objects are uh, different comma separated values of different keys and values, so properties and their values. And in JavaScript, arrays are objects, functions are objects, regular expressions are objects, and of course objects are objects. So you can create your own objects as well, and then there are out of the box objects like functions and regular expressions. Object is a container of properties where property has a name and a value. A property name can be string including an empty string, and property can be value of a property can be static or dynamic, which are methods. So simple example can be in our car object, where car has a name, has a year when the car was created, and the age, which is more like a dynamic value. So a function, which is also called the method. So general, how in other languages the objects are defined, very similarly key value properties objects are defined in JavaScript. So this is one way to create an object in JavaScript using object literal. So we'll just create this, and then we'll see how we can access different properties. So I'm just copy pasting this so that we can do it quickly. So I'll put the code in the description, don't worry. So here I have created one object which has different properties. So this is the property name, this is the property value, this is the property name and value, name and the value, name and the value. So here you can see I don't even need quotes, right? Without quotes I can create the name of the property, and there are different values to the property. This is a string, this is integer, here the value is an object itself, right? Here also the value is an object, here the value is a function. So this is what this is called the method. So everything is covered in this sort of function. And how can we access different properties of the object? So first we can just check if the object what we have created, what is the type. So here we can clearly see this is an object. So flight is a variable which is an object. Okay, now if I want to access any property, very simply I can use the dot operator. So if I just say dot airlines, then I can get oceanic printed here, which is the value, or I can also check the number. So here I get the number of the flight. Similarly, if I want to see the arrival, which is object itself, so I get that as well. So here you can see the property arrivals value is also an object, right? And here we can see that this is an object, these are the properties, and also has a proto object available, or proto object attached to this object. So any object by default gets this proto object attached to it by default. I can change the value of any property simply by assigning. Right now the number is this. I can add a new property, number 2, right? Then I can give it some. Now this also is added to flight, right? I can delete a property by delete. So here very simply we saw how we can create an object, right, and how we can access different properties of the object, and how the method also we can access. So like name number is a method, so we can say flight dot name number and parenthesis, so we can access this function as well. Other values are static values, but the name number is a function, so we can access that as well. Okay, so moving on, so object literals, we saw how we can update, we can access any property. Dot operator is very important, right? This can be used to access the property. Now we'll come to the object oriented programming, or OOPS, in JavaScript, right? JavaScript has a class free object system, right? So earlier, before 2015, the object there were no classes in JavaScript, it was class free language. But now after 2015 it has been introduced, right? Every object is linked to a proto object from which it can inherit properties. So right now also we saw the flight object had a proto object, right, which is attached to any object, and that object is like the parent object of the object where it from which it inherits all the properties, right? Functions in JavaScript or object thus can have method, right? Now coming to the constructor function, these are very important. These act as classes in other languages. So the definition of the object can be defined here. All the blueprint, whatever the different parameters that function will have or that object will have can be defined here. So these act as constructor function, acts like classes. And in a way, in 2015 when the classes were introduced, this is what they have done. They have added classes and a constructor function you can use inside the class to create different kind of objects. So we'll just take this simple example. So here I have created this very simple constructor function. Okay, so this function is now defined. So I have said the name of this object which has been created, the name will be whatever the name is passed, and the greeting will be just that name is alerted, right? Now I can create a new object of this class, of this constructor function, right? I give it a name, say John, and I have to use the keyword new. Okay, and now person is created. So this is an object which is created and it has all the properties. The name, if they do simply dot name, then I can create, or I can also call the method and the name is prompted, right? Very simple. So constructor functions are more generic functions which help us define different kind of object, right? And when we have to create an object of that constructor function, we can use this. Now final is the class inheritance. So this is the new syntax which I was talking about. So you can create a class, the name of the class, then a constructor function inside it, and then give methods. So like here we said this dot greeting equal to a function. In the new syntax we can just mention the method here. Okay, and then if you want to extend this class, right, so then you can use the extends keyword. Very simply you can define the constructor method inside the new subclass and call the super. So when you call the super, it will call the parent of this class and this constructor function will be called, and then you can define all the methods in the subclass as well, and of course subclass will have all the methods of this the parent class also. Okay, and simple problem you can do, I have defined one constructor function which has three properties, name, size and side length, and you have to define another property called cal parameter, which is like a method, and the value of that will be the sides into the side length. So you can just divide this dot calc parameter equal to function like how we defined it here, right, and that will give you that method to this constructor function. Also if you want to use class syntax, you can use something like this as well. So yeah, this is it, very simple. We can create different objects in Python using object literal or constructor functions. We can access each of the parameter or the property using dot operator. We can add or manipulate or edit the keys also by assigning different values, right? And to extend the class to another classes, we can use the extend parameter. So yeah, this is it. Any question, please let me know. Thank you.